like a clear heat upon earth, like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest, or a fourth harvest, when the bud is perfect and the sour grape.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. I don't know why it's plural, actually, now I think about it. Okay. I guess because there's not just one. Alright, we're continuing in chapter 18 of Isaiah. Woe to the land shadowing with wings. And it seems like everyone brings up, could this be America in prophecy? When they come to this passage, or if they study it at all. Or if they drag it out of mothballs. And I said yesterday, I just don't really see that. I mean, I can see it, but it's like, it's like the description is so vague. And, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia isn't exactly pointing to North America from the Middle East. So, sorry about that. And so, but here's the thing. They do see a connection because of certain things, right? Like, they send ambassadors by the, the thing is, you could have said that about the British Empire or many other nations, I suppose. This whole, like, the specific actions are not that specific enough. But the thing is, no matter who it actually refers to, we can always derive principles. And so I said there are principles that can be derived often. I mean, there's sometimes you get a scripture that's a one-off, meaning it's only good in its context. I don't know if there's much of that. Some things are only, the truth is only the truth right then and there, and there's not a lot of wider applicability. I don't know. I had a few extra syllables in there, I think. I was about to, anyways. So the behaviors written here, you could see that as being, I see America, I guess. But like I said, it doesn't seem to be, I said before, if you're anxious for American prophecy, it's there in the book of Revelation. This is all nations, I say they'll all worship the beast, the greater, the smaller. I mean, when it says all nations, you can always throw America in. I guess people think like some big important countries should be mentioned in the Bible, but what about the Mongols? They were big and important. Very important, not mentioned in the Bible. The Huns, not as big or important, but, what I'm saying is, like, not every historic event is in the Bible. And certainly not every nation in history is in the Bible. Not with any specificity. The only way every nation is in the Bible is when it says things like all nations and tongues and kindreds. And stuff like that. Like, yeah, well, there it includes everything. But other than that, no, you're not going to have everything specified. And there's no mentions of the United States of America in the Bible, not by any specific measure that I've ever seen anyone show me any particularly good evidence to say that that's the case. They just don't see it. So we're beginning in verse 3 here with this. We already talked about, the land shadowing with wings. We talked about it. Maybe it's whirring wings, and that's what that's what most translators say. And the thing about it is busy little bees flying around, ambassadors. They send ambassadors by the sea in vessels of bulrushes. It means in reed constructed watercraft, constructed out of watercraft. They would, you can make boats out of like reeds and stuff like that. Binding them together was quite common on the Nile and up in Ethiopia, I suppose. So I don't think that the kind of ship means anything specific to us today, but and again, if this is the United States of America, we don't send. I definitely see the African kings here, and they're sending their ambassadors in their grass manufactured ships You know what I mean? As opposed to American steel. You know what I mean? Again, and those that say, "Go ye swift messengers to a nation scattered in people." Oh, we read this. People terrible from the beginning to the two, whose land the rivers have spoiled. So they're going to a nation. Now, I think that I've seen... See, here's the problem. I've seen people teach this about America, and it's like, but the part about America is this people tall and clean shaven, tall and peeled. We talked about that last time. Scattered and peeled. Tall and smooth is what it means. Scattered and, scattered, things are far apart. They become scattered, and when two measurements are far apart, it's a long, and you see how the language gets to tall. Scattered can be tall because the language is not being translated precisely. All right. So there's the land that's being said to woe to, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, sends ambassadors to this other nation. That's what it says. This other nation. So it's like when they talk about the land shining with wings, they're like imagining America, and they're looking at a quarter and the eagle and like and then they say, oh, well, and then we got this, and they're tall and clean shaven. Why, that's America. We invented the Gillette razor. But again, there are other, it's like, I don't know. We're not the first people ever to shave. It's in fact, the Native Americans were known for being clean shaven. Europeans weren't. They were known for being hairy. So I don't know who he refers to. I don't know who he refers to. But it doesn't matter, really. Whose land the rivers have spoiled or divided. Because the idea of dividing and spoil are similar. Because you divide up like some sort of thing you've stolen. You divide the spoil. Well, to spoil something means to divide it among people. And that's what it means here. The rivers have divided their land. I don't know. You could look into that. It's not even important because they're not even part of the passage. The passage is mostly focused on God after this point. Or upon this, like I said, is America mentioned in this passage? Well, yeah, verse 3. It mentions America right here. All ye inhabitants of the world. There we go. We got America in there. And dwellers on the earth. See ye when he lifteth up an ensign on the mountains, and when he bloweth a trumpet, hear ye. To a nation. So I'm not sure. It seems a little bit like sinister. Like the ambassadors are going out to the nation. This nation is meant to be tall, clean shaven. That might be too frightening to a person who's accustomed to seeing people with beards, men that were all clean shaven. It's an unusual sight. If you're used to beards, I'm saying, like to see men unshaved would seem like very strange customs indeed. And think about it. Especially if your whole nation's custom is not to shave. Remember, in Israel, they didn't shave. It was against the law for men to shave. Literally. Not that men didn't anyways, because they didn't follow most of the law to begin with. But it was technically against the law. Thou shalt not round the corners of your beard. You weren't to make little fancy beards and stuff. You were supposed to have a wild beard, I guess. That's to show you were an Israelite. Right, and Europeans, when they came to new places, they were noted for being just hairy and smelly. Not just beard, but among other things, for being hairy and smelly. And hey, when you come off a ship for 6 months, you're never going to smell very nice either. It's not a very fair assessment, Been living on a ship for 6 months. All right. So yeah, they smelled, of course, and of course they were hairy too, because they, sailors don't shave in the old days, not that I know of. Anyways, well, some do, right? The officers would probably shave. I mean, it was coming into fashion, but Europeans in the old times, in the times of the Old Testament, would have been known as hairy, I think. I don't think they had come into shaving practices yet. I mean, for most of the tribes in Europe, like the Germanic tribes, they were all beard wearing. I mean, literally, there were tribes called the Lombards, which means, well, in German it would be the Langobards, which means the long beards. So, anyways, there's a people that's this fierce, strange people who are far away, a terrible people, another threat. Assyria was a nation far off that they'd heard of, rumors of, but had not been affecting Israel, right? And so this nation is kind of like Assyria. They're just another farther nation, foreign, strange, but powerful, terrible, dangerous, even that far off. And their land is divided by rivers. That may mean a land crisscrossed with rivers is probably a good land. You know what I mean? So it might mean whose people live in a good land, or who live in a good land, whose land is fertile. Because quite frankly, when a river comes through your land, it does the opposite of spoils it. You know what I mean? A river for the land is a blessing. It brings water and silt. And if it floods like the Euphrates and the Nile, it can deposit all kinds of silt in the soil for fertility. And so this is this nation that's standing off there. We don't know it, and they don't really describe it. The land buzzing with activity. That's why I look at shadowing with wings. They're buzzing with activity. Oh no, there's woe to the land buzzing with activity that sends vessels off to a nation scattered in peel, to a terrible people. There's a nation that's all busy. Beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, they're all busy sending messengers everywhere to a people terrible. To a nation that meets that. So, again, like the way Israel, because this reminds me of how Israel and Judah tried to curry favor with the Assyrians. It seems like this nation is also trying to form some sort of alliance or relationship, a positive relationship of at least trade with this nation that's far off. A little farther out of the range, beyond Ethiopia. Ethiopia was far in Israel. I mean, it is. I mean, the world's a big place, but, they're big in it. If you live in Israel, going down to Ethiopia was a trek. But there were places even farther, obviously. And so it says here, now there comes this general message to all the inhabitants of the world, dwellers on the earth. See ye, when he lift up an ensign on the mountains, and when he bloweth a trumpet here. What it's saying is when God does obvious things, when he makes a sign, see it. When he blows a trumpet, hear it. And this goes back to something I say over and over again about prophecy and about the book of Revelation, and specifically about the trumpets, that the trumpets are signals. And I think that even if they are not literally to be interpreted, meaning that we should err on the side of taking the things written about the seven trumpets to be, at least in the early phases of them, trending towards a more literal interpretation, like the idea of a great mountain burning with fire in the second trumpet, that we should look for some sort of celestial event that looked like that. That's one of my opinions, is that the second trumpet, we should expect as one, the trumpets are signs. They are signals. And as the Apostle Paul said, if the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare themselves to battle? So I expect something that is called a trumpet in prophecy to be something that when you see it, you recognize immediately. especially if you have eyes to see and ears to hear. If God, if any trumpets had sounded, the people whom God has blessed with his Spirit and who have eyes to see should know about it and be able to tell us specifically, or at least each other specifically, what that represents. Meaning, what event out there is the fulfillment of that trumpet, whatever it happens to be. I remember Arnold Murray used to be like, we're in the fifth trumpet. Arnold Murray was my former teacher that I renounced years ago. But he used to say, what did he used to say? About, whatever. I already said what he used to say and I forgot it because I got it out so quickly. But anyway, the trumpets. Oh, well, he used to say we're in the fifth trumpet. That's what I said. But it was like, what was the first one? And no specific answer. Look, if I ever tell you we're in a trumpet or something, like we just experienced, if I can't describe to you what the heck it was, don't believe me. Don't listen to me. If I go, oh, we're in the third trumpet now. I'm like, oh, really? What's the first and second trumpet? Well, there were some event. You better have an answer. Now, if you come to the second trumpet, like I said, I believe the second trumpet is some sort of meteor, a large one. Something that at least qualify as a mountain-sized object. It could be something as small as a kilometer across. Because that would be earth-changing. A kilometer. That's something smaller than a kilometer. That's probably too big. But if you get something big enough, if you get a hunk of rock big enough, it doesn't have to be a kilometer. Think about it. If you had something like, I have a 3-acre property, and if it was the size of my 3-acre property, it'd be a freaking mountain. As far as to people, it'd be good enough, is my point. If you get anything at a certain size, here's the thing, we don't have any, the thing, we don't have any notable meteor strikes in the ocean, like described in Revelation, because there's a mountain thrown in the sea and it does stuff. And I expect to see something that is at least, if not literally that could be legitimately and clearly tied through prophetic symbology to something. Something that I could point to and say, that's it. That's the signal. That's the sign. And when God puts out a sign, you got to hear it. When God puts out a signal, you got to see it. Be the one who sees it. And there's, and the thing is, God often puts out all kinds of signs that people miss. It's like glaring. He puts out these glaring warnings, glaring reminders, red alert. God makes signals. And we don't see them. And it's a pity because that is the whole point of them. The point of a trumpet is to make a signal. At least in this context. He blows a trumpet, so hear it. He's not just tooting into the wind. When he sounds the warning, take heed. And so, and also, but by the same token, a trumpet must be something that can be given heed to. It's got to have some substance. It can't just trumpet like, I'll sound my trumpet. Well, what kind of sound is that? Let me go again. That was a terrible charge or whatever, Or, meaning the song that the trumpet plays, or the bugle in that case, whether it's revelry, taps, you know what that means. It's the end of the day. See the signal, it makes the sound, and we all know what's going on. That's the point. That's the point of a signal, a trumpet, or whatever, a sign. The sign is so we all know. Like, so Paul doesn't have to go to Jim and Fred and Susie and Jill and tell them, hey, did you notice the revelation started? Yeah. Yeah, I shouldn't have to go tell someone. Not other believers. Not other spirit-filled believers. Certainly not. I should not have to, because God sends us the sign, and we should hear it. For the Lord said unto me, I will take my rest. I will consider in my dwelling place like a clear heat upon herbs, like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. Yeah, there is, the warm, sunny days, when a plant is well watered and ready for it, and that sun hits, man, like the past couple of days, the past few weeks, my garden, I put it out there May 1st every year. Actually, this year I started a week earlier. I was like, in the middle of April, I knew immediately, I was like, I should have planted April 1st this year, because I could have gotten early. We have had no frosts since then. I could have planted April 1st, man, and I'd be swimming in lettuce by now. And probably cucumbers. I'd probably be having cucumbers by now. Maybe not. That early March, that April growing, it's too cold. It doesn't grow fast. And that's the point. It's like a nice warm day with sun. Boy, those plants just explode. A clear heat. That's what I'm thinking, because when he says, here's the thing. You may say, well, Paul, how do you know that that's what that means about clear heat upon herbs? How do you know a clear heat upon herbs isn't just going to ruin them? Well, because of the second clause, like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. But wait a second, the cloud of dew, it sounds good in the heat. Yeah, but again, this is the doubling effect in prophecy. Isaiah loves to say things twice. And he usually says the same thing twice. He wouldn't say the opposite things twice. Like, I'm going to consider for my dwelling place and smite those flowers, right? Like a dew in the heat. So this clear heat, whatever the translation be, I don't need that to understand this is a positive thing. I'm going to bless. I'm going to take my rest, God says. I will consider. And he's going to go into a meditative state. And when God thinks about things, he says, I'm like this clear heat. The sunshine. I think that's the sunshine. And let me look at, I don't know exactly. Let's look up let's look at the good old Bible Hub. Because that's definitely the kind of thing that's worth exploring just a little bit. A clear heat. That's two words. The problem, not the problem, but like as I was looking at this, and heat, the word for heat is heat, but the word for clear, that's the one that we probably should be looking at. Tsak, it means dazzling or glowing. And dazzling, that is sunny or bright, figuratively evident. So again, I think, like I said, it's like a sunny or bright thing, like a sunny heat. Like a gently, I don't think that heat is, I bet the word heats are, I bet both those words are not the same word for heat. That one's like more severe, maybe. That's just a guess. It may be wrong, but let's see. Heat upon herbs. Comb heat. Same word both times, so they did a good job. Because you should never translate the same two different words the same in the same verse. Like, I've seen that in the King James, where they use two totally different words and they translate them the same. I was a little worried about that. And I was betting against them. I was betting against them, but they proved me wrong. No, they translated that consistently. So, though this clear heat, I look as positive, because it's the sunshine. But also, there's a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest, because the heat of harvest is different. There's a heat that is, there's that warm sunshine that comes, that brings the growth, right? But in harvest, and so so what it's saying is, I give the light when the light is needed, and I give the rain when the rain is needed. I give the water and the sun both. And so my meditation is like a clear heat. It is like the sun shining down on the plants. And like the dew, the sun shining on the plants when they need it. You know what I mean when they're growing. And also like a dew when, and herbs also, in fact, when it says herbs, that word herb may refer to, what? That's weird. I gotta look at a translation. Let's look at the Devil's translation, because the word light was the word for herbs here was or light. Is that even right? Let's see. Do they mess that up? According to this, illumination, concrete, blight, clear, day, light, morning. No. Wait, clear. This is wrong then, because it should say herbs. See here? This tells you how the King James translated this word, right? This word or, which I've encountered before. In my studies, it's the word for light. Okay, so Esther, Job, so I don't want to look at all the occurrence. I wanted to look at the, well, see, if I look up all 122 occurrences, it's fine to have the idea of light in here, but why it's translated as herbs, at least that's what it said in the thing. That's the word they had linked up. Now that may be wrong. Let's see, 18. Again, look at here. Isaiah 18. Do you see any reference to Isaiah 18? It goes right from 13 to 30. So, when we look at this here, the link here on Bible Hub must be wrong. And now let's see the New International Version. Clear heat upon herbs. Yeah, see, look at. Well, look at, they translate this word not. Well, they call it, they translate it light, not herbs. So, but the thing that gets me is like why, and I'll show you in a second. It says here, oh, I didn't, dummy. It says right here, this is what the Lord says to me. I will remain quiet and will look on from my dwelling place, like shimmering heat in the sunshine, like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. And hold on. So that, again, they have it translated more like, I was looking up in the words here, that this herbs is a light. If you hold the thing over, it says 216, or, a light, heat, 2527, comb, heat. I'm sorry, herbs was light. Did I say heat? Light, heat, and glowing. So anyways, it's obviously, this is a bad translation. You know. Even so, that light heat, again, he is that shimmering heat in the like a shimmering heat and like a cloud of dew. And so, though in both cases, I would say both are necessary again. But I think the perspective is more of, now reading it like that, if it's the shimmering heat, you know, like, you know when you see the heat rising and you see that disturbance, or you see a cloud of dew. In the morning, sometimes you do see dew. You see, you ever see morning clouds? You know what I mean? Where you see a morning like mist. You know, because the dew can kind of come up as a mist. So he's talking about, I think, more about the I will observe from my sort of omnipresent oversight position, like the shimmering heat. I'm going to hover over the situation. You know what I mean? And like the cloud, I will hover, also watching. You know, I'm going to sit there. I'm going to be above and ubiquitous, because that's the idea. The heat is just there, and it's over everything. And same thing with the dew. It's there. But at the same time, these are both necessary. And also the cloud of dew is a relief in the midst of the heat. For afore the harvest, when the bud is perfect, and the sour grape is ripening in the flower, he shall both cut off the sprigs with pruning hooks, and take away and cut down the branches. They shall be left together. I should go back to my, not that it's a problem really, but they shall be left together to the fowls of the mountains, or I'm sorry, wait, to the beasts of the mountains? Oh, to the fowls of the mountains and to the beasts of the earth, and the fowls shall summer on them, and all the beasts of the earth shall winter upon them. So again, for before the harvest, when the bud is perfect, and the sour grape is ripening in the flower, he shall cut off the sprigs with pruning hooks, and take away and cut down the branches. I mean, this is the worst possible time. You prune when the plant's dormant or early in the season. You know what I mean? You prune early while it makes sense. Like, for example, if you have a grapevine, you prune it at the beginning of the season, and then it grows, and then it provides a big harvest because you pruned it. And you can prune throughout the season. I'm not an expert in pruning, okay? That's the truth. In fact, I'm worse than not an expert. It's one of those things I've never quite learned how to do right. It's hard. You know, you raise plants and stuff, and then you just cut off the top or something like, you know, it's sort of like you have to trust that it's going to make it do better. It's a great lesson. You know, learning to prune plants. If you're like me and you're overly sentimental, you have trouble like, you know, like I plant 2 seeds in the same container. I have trouble deciding which one to pull out. Not that it's that hard, but I'm just saying, but like the fact that there's even a moment's hesitation is annoying. For me anyways, because I just don't want to be like that. But I don't want to care. Because why should I? It's just, you know, but still you raise them and then you have to have the faith to go in and cut off the top, knowing that while that's the most rapidly growing part, it seems like the most important part of the plant, the plant's actually going to do better for you as far as fruit production if you remove parts of it. You know, the Lord does the same thing to us. As it's written in the New Testament, whom he loves he chastens, and it's likened also to pruning. The way you prune a plant, you remove branches so that the growth is more focused. You know what I mean? Like if I have a tree, like an apple tree, I have an apple tree, and I'm not, like I said, I haven't been learning to be good at pruning, but this year I tried. I was like, I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to cut all the top branches off, all the things going up high, and keep the thing short. And I'm going to open the middle up and try to make it more broad. And so I'm trying to make it so that the apples are all within reach, and also so that it produces apples. Because sometimes you take away branches and leafy growth because the tree will put all its energy into growing new leaves and sticks. It doesn't know or have a preference as to fruit or body. You know, it doesn't have it has to be influenced by the environment. You know, the environment will influence this, meaning if it's got no sunlight, it's going to put all its energy into growing straight up, and it's going to try to find the sun. That's why you find things that are growing inside or in dark places growing long and spindly. If it's got a lot of sun, I was like showing someone my oak tree the other day. I was like, this oak tree, they're like, is it a dwarf? I'm like, no, it's just growing in the open sun. This is what happens when a tree has no shade. It grows as broad as it can, and it covers as much ground. And that oak tree is as tall as it is wide. And it's 20 years old, but it's only about 20 feet high. But it's huge in its way. I mean, you know, it's big. And then I have another one that I grew in the shady area, and it's very tall. It's about 40 feet high, and it's not wide at all because it's growing in a bunch of trees, and it's been trying to shoot up to get above everything. And what's cool is eventually it will be above everything. It'll be above all the mulberry trees that it's growing over. It will shoot up, and it's got up there now, and then it's going to go boom. It's going to puff its top out and just cover everything. And that's what they'll do. They'll grow up, and then they'll branch out once they get above. And, you know, that's how they work. And so, you know, what he's saying is, but the harvest is coming. And when the bud is perfect, not right about the time to harvest, but right about the time it's about to mature. The bud is perfect. Look at the bud is complete. Perfect means complete, by the way. And that's what it's saying. The bud is complete. You know, the flower, the blood, and the sour grape is ripening. You know, right now I can go out to my apple tree, and you can see there's these little apples, and on the ends of the little apples there's a flower because the flowers turn into apples. And so that sour fruit that's because if you eat it too soon, you know what what unripe apples taste like. Very sour and not sweet at all. Right? Maybe not even sour enough to enjoy. But while it's ripening, he suddenly comes in and cuts off the sprigs with pruning. He prunes it. So again, the branches that are bringing forth the fruit, he's cutting down. So what I'm saying is, like, it's a very odd behavior that right before the harvest to come in and just cut everything, to strip the tree bare. That's what it sounds. Cut off the sprigs with pruning hooks and cut down the branches. So the tree's just ripe. You have the vision of a tree ripening, with fruit. And everything's going fine. And then God comes along and snip, cuts everything down. And I think that's, it's indicative of what, the best laid plans of mice and men oft go astray. We have our plans. Yes, well, this year we'll do this, and we'll go and we'll set that up. We'll build this, we'll do that, we'll do this, we'll do that. But God has no intention of allowing any of that to happen. But it doesn't matter. You keep going. I'll start the project. I'll get all the stuff together. I'll put all the things in line. I got everything. Everything's going right. Let's make a list. Let's check it twice. We'll get all the things we're planning and building and start. We're getting and now the project's starting to come together. And then I know we're boom, boom, boom. It's all destroyed. It doesn't work, and whatever. Everything falls apart. Because what we were building wasn't of God. And if we are of God, God will come and he will affect things we do. We can find ourselves frustrated in our efforts because they're against God. We're working for a harvest that he doesn't approve of. Like for example, like let's say, we have some sort of obsession in our life, whether it's a business, whether it's a hobby, and it's, let's say it's something that's like fruitful, like a business, and we throw our all into it, and we're just into it. We are serving that business to the utmost. I don't know how to do this because it's like, this is not speaking of me. This is not my personality. But they're just all embroiled into serving it, but for their own good, for the sake of their soul, God could conceivably come in and just upend everything. And it could be the best thing that ever happened to them. How many people do you know that have said, I got fired, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me? Oh, I lost my business, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I lost my job, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was about to say one that I shouldn't say. But I've heard, I would never say myself. But some people I've heard say, my wife left me, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. They'll say things like that. And because there are things that we plan for ourselves, that we plan for good, but that are not of God. And so those things, if God loves us, he may come into our life and interfere and cause, upheavals that make that thing that is distracting our lives from what they ought to be, make it go away, make it disappear. And he will. That's the thing. That's the thing to know. This is the thing. Like, what is he going on about here? Well, to the land shadowing with wings, and the ambassadors go off to the people who are shaved and tall, and then we talk about people listening to a trumpet, and then we talk, it's a weird chapter, right? Then we talk about people listening to things, and then it says, I'm going to cut down things before they're done. Well, the point is, like, God tells us things. Like, I hate that. And we do it anyways. Don't be surprised when he comes in and frustrates your works, because he chastens every beloved son. You know what I mean? You better listen to God. Because if you don't, he might come in and cut down all your works. Hey, when he sounds a trumpet here, because you know what he said to me? He said, yeah, I'm just going to sit there and watch while you work. And then when I see fit, right before you're about to finish that work, I'm going to step in and cut it all down and frustrate everything you've been doing. Because I happen to hate your works but love you. God will come in. If you don't pay attention to what he's doing, he's going to come in at you. That's what it said. Jesus said, the servant that did not give heed to his master, that his Lord will come for him at an hour he does not yet expect. He's going to come to him when he doesn't expect it and give him what he doesn't want. You know what I mean? If you're not paying attention to what God's doing, you may find God's doing something to you don't like to get you to listen. So when he lifts up a big signal, pay attention to it. It's for your own good. If I could do everything God wants me to do by him just telling me, I would, and I would be glad. You know what I mean? I wish I could. If just hearing it would make it so. You hear that bird? Meh. It's a catbird. That's their actual sound. That's what they call them, a catbird. But actually, they imitate all the other birds. They're like a mockingbird. They're the ones that you'll hear. Well, at least around my house, if you hear a bird making 50 or 60 different bird calls, it's the catbirds. And they're parasitic. They're nest parasites, too. So they're not particularly nice birds. But I don't know. I don't hate them or anything, but they're just, there they are. So, hey, you better pay attention to what God's doing, because every once in a while he shows up and cuts down your harvest before it's ready. So you better pay attention. You know what I mean? That's what it's saying. You better pay attention to God, because when you're counting on that harvest, he's just hanging around waiting to cut it down on you. Potentially. I'm not saying God's just out there just trying to troll everybody. Just like, I see they're getting started. He's not like some kid watching the ants fix the anthill and then being like, okay, let's mess it up again. They shall be left together to the fowls of the mountains. That's all just saying, like, the branch, the works you did, that you were, like, all your ripening fruit that you had there, I cut them down and I fed it to the animals. Because that's what I thought of it. I thought of your works in terms of the animals. I thought it might be something fit for them to eat. I'm going to leave your works, the branches that were cut down off of your tree, to the fowls of the mountains. Now, this could be applied to nations, to individuals, a lot to Israel, because this looks a lot like Israel. The story of Israel. He's saying, woe to the land far off that does the same things, because this is what God does with his people. He watches. He pays attention. When they're not listening, he gets their attention. If he's got to cut down your harvest and make you miserable to get you to pay attention, well, then that's what will happen. It's not that bad, really. He doesn't make us miserable, but in a moment we can. I mean, look at Job. I know, Job is an example, and I'm glad that God doesn't do that all the time. But it's an example that bad things can happen to quote-unquote good people, and it's not because of sin. It's just because that's the way things are, and because God desires that sometimes we should have to endure hardship, because it's what makes us the kind of people that are fit for his kingdom. It's the things that he has ordained that we should go through. It's like, I look at butterflies when they emerge from their cocoon. When they start to emerge, you could go in there with a razor and cut the cocoon away and help them out so that they can, so that they get out easy. But they go through this struggle to get out that forces fluid into their wings. And if you help them get out, they may never fly. You know what I mean? They have to go through the cocoon. They have to struggle out. It helps. The struggle is part of what makes them fly. You know what I mean? And the struggle is part of what makes us the sons of God. You know what I mean? Jesus, in striving against sin, laid his life down. We also may be called to give similar sacrifices. Don't be deceived for a moment. You know what I mean? People think like that was something the apostles did. We never want to, we're so used to comfort. We are so used to comfort. It's not a good thing. You should accustom yourself to a bit of austerity so you don't become soft. That's why you work out. Don't become soft. Work out. You have to work out. Everyone should work out some, by the way. Everyone needs to walk. It's like if you're a student of mine, you need to get some exercise. Please do, for your own good and for the good of your brethren. We have to take care of each other. People who need to be taken care of are a burden. And some people, the point is, if you can at all help yourself, please do, because there are those who need your help who can't help themselves. And I know I know there are many struggles, and I hate picking on people's weight and stuff, but I'm just saying, we need exercise. Walk. If I can at least carry myself, nobody else has to carry me. They say you need 2.5 hours a week or something of exercise, something like that. And it can be just brisk walking, though I try to do other things, And you preferably should get in doing difficult tasks. It's a part of what makes you strong as a human. It also preserves your vigor, the vigor of your strength and your muscles. You have to use them. And we should use them. We should use our bodies, and our bodies were meant to be busy and to work, and that's something we should do because that is service. We are expected to potentially serve God in whatever capacity He asks of us, and I want to be ready to give service. I want to be able to be ready to give a wide variety of service. I have limitations because of my physical body, because I have chronic conditions and stuff like that. I'd like to get in such shape that none of that is a concern. I would want to be able to walk for days if necessary. I want to be able to do that because, as I was saying, one of the things I long for is to pay off my home. I've had a mortgage since I lived out here, right? And maybe this is personal, but it's a general application. I've wanted to pay off my home. This is an important message for everyone, and it is related, actually. Perfectly related. Because I've been thinking about this, and it's funny because I haven't been thinking about the verse, but I've been thinking about this idea. In life, I got a lot of stress. I've got 8 children. The ones that are adults aren't less stressful. They're just new and more. Well, there's different problems, and there's different concerns, and it's different. And they help themselves quite a bit, but that doesn't mean, you have any involvement, of course. Anyways, without getting into the specifics of anyone's experience in that, point is, I deal with a lot of stress, and, sometimes it feels like more than I can handle. Sometimes I feel like I just gotta go lay down sometimes. Right? Sometimes you get in those situations where it's like it's overwhelming. Well, I think if my house was paid off, I'd never worry about that. I wouldn't have them bringing them on my neck. I wouldn't have to think I wouldn't have to earn as much every month. Or the money I earn could go for other things like helping people I want to help. There's people I want to help. I'm already helping people. I'm helping a lot of people. I've sacrificed making money in many ways so that I could do things I care about more. You know what I mean? I did not focus my life on earning money. And so I have enough to live instead of always saving up for a life I don't even know I have yet. And it's not, some people say it's not wise. It's not a question of just the problem is, or whatever. I don't want to get into all my details. What I want to talk about is that I think wow, wouldn't it be great to own the house? All right, that's the main thing. Wouldn't it be great to fully own this? I mean, I own it, but it's like, I haven't paid off the mortgage yet. As long as you don't have to pay off your mortgage, they can come get you. It's like they own it. What if you don't pay your mortgage? What if you don't have enough money to pay your mortgage? It's not that I'm even worried about that particular. I don't worry about it, or I try not to worry about it. But it'd be like one less thing to be concerned about, and it would be good, right? So I see positive things to paying off the house, obviously. But it's not like once I pay it off, then we're secure. And no one ever can take it away from us. It's like just because you own it, it's like bandits could come and drive me off of my home. Now they say like, well, we have law and order. We do. But what if law and order can go away? People are, oh no, it can't. Oh yeah, it can. You don't understand how fragile this all is. It's fragile. People who don't build things don't know what it takes to get there. The people in our society, unfortunately, most of them have never built a damn thing in their lives. They are living in a world that was entirely built by other people. You know what I mean? And they don't know what it takes to actually create something from nothing, like a society, something big and complicated. I don't mean to do things like your job or to do things like cook and clean. I mean to do things like set up a civil society where people basically follow the rules. And the cops are there merely as an afterthought for the very few people who don't play along. You know what I mean? We all play along. Like, I don't set up roadblocks and rob cars. You know what I mean? It's not, you know what I mean? But in the geographical area I'm at, it's not that impossible that we couldn't do things like that. Because, well, as far as when you're out in the middle of nowhere, not that I'm that in the middle of nowhere, but what I'm saying is people could do things like that. And they do. There are ambushes. Sometimes there are dark things afoot. Right? Point is, society, everyone kind of follows the rules for the most part. We all agree to this without like having a formal agreement or without being forced. You start breaking that. You start just having bandits running loose. You start having, abolish the police and all that. Yeah, and then they could just come and take your home away. Or they could find some excuse. They could steal it, whatever. My point is, just because I own it doesn't mean it's invincible. People could come here and burn it down. My enemies could come and burn it from under me. That's like Job. He thought he was secure. He didn't he wasn't, there was no fault of his that he thought he was secure, but he sort of had this expectation of blessing from God. He had tried to follow and please God in every way possible. And so when he lost all his family and possessions, it was quite a blow. He didn't expect that, but that can happen. You can lose everything. And now, Job, it was for God's glory, and it is explained. But sometimes bad things happen to us because we do bad things. And sometimes bad things happen to us because we don't pay attention to the signs. God sends us a signal like, bad idea, and we don't listen. And so we go into a work half-baked. We're going into the work, we're doing the work, and then, before the harvest, all of a sudden, snip, 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 oh, it didn't work out. That's like it says, but the harvest shall be a heap in the day of grief and of desperate sorrow. In the burden of Damascus, the harvest eventually, there's harvests that aren't so desirable. This is the harvest that's going to be left to the animals. They shall be left together to the fowls of the mountains, to the beasts of the earth, and the fowls shall summer upon them, and all the beasts. It's just going to be left to the wilderness. It's not going to be something that's farmed. If he was going to bless it, he'd be talking about, and I will tend the tree, I will dung the tree, I will dig around it, I will do all these things. When the bud is perfect, I will protect it and put nets or whatever. There'd be all kinds of things he could say he would do to it other than this. When he leaves it to the animals, that's always a sign of God abandoning something. He says, I'm going to destroy the project and then I'm going to walk away from it. And you can just either sit there in the ruins and feel sorry for yourself, or you can move on, which I recommend. In that time shall the present be brought unto the Lord of hosts, of a people scattered and peeled, again, tall and smooth, and from a people terrible from their beginning hitherto, a people feared far and wide, is what this should be. A nation meted out and trodden underfoot. That's wrong. It should be a nation meting out, meaning meting out justice or meting out punishments, meting out violence, and treading down. Meaning a land that's prone to oppress, whose land the rivers are have spoiled. They're blessed, a well-watered land. If the land is divided, if your land is crisscrossed by rivers, you have a well-watered land. I can't think. It's very fertile and well-watered land. They are a tall, smooth people, terrible and warlike, treading down, meeting out, and their land is divided by rivers. I almost wonder if, for a second, I entertained in my mind the possibility that he was talking about the diaspora. That when the Israelites would go into the diaspora, they would become unrecognizable, tall and smooth-shaved. But that, again, Cush would send ambassadors from far to this nation, that was terrible from the beginning. I don't know. Doesn't make sense. No, I don't buy it. The terrible from the beginning hitherto. It's pathetic at the beginning in that case. You don't start off a nation with slaves in the diaspora and become a terrible nation from the beginning. So I don't know. That just stuck into my mind, and I had to run. I thought, instead of thinking it silently and running through the possibility, I run it through, run the idea openly in front of you and then decide if it's right or wrong. That happens a lot because in an expository study like this, I'm literally thinking as fast as I speak, which is always dangerous. Like to think aloud. That's what I say. It's like, all people. I always admire all the people who do like Rush Limbaugh or guys who do like those 3-hour shows a day. They talk for like 3 hours a day, and it's so shocking to me that they don't have thousands of clips of all the unfortunate things they say. Because I always think like, I'm writing songs that could garner attention, and once they finally pay attention to me, it's gonna take them like 5 minutes to find me saying awful things. Look at him saying terrible things. Justifying genocide and like let's go to my, evil in the purpose. He thinks evil is purposeful. I don't know. Am I, like for our doctrines, they're going to fault us, and for our thoughts, everyone has evil. The funny thing is when people start faulting about their thoughts, they're such a bunch of hypocrites. I tell you what, I would love, like I said, I've been canceled, but I want to face down cancel culture because I will not bow the knee. I will not back down. I will not apologize to those hypocrites. I want to talk to those hypocrites. I do. I want to call them hypocrites to their face. But the message here, I think, is this, that there are people far off who are like, I have trouble putting it all together. But he's saying they're going to bring a present to the Lord of hosts. This far off group, this terrible people. I don't know, is it the Romans? They were smooth shaven, I thought. Yeah. Most of them actually. Not all. But if you look at all the busts of Caesar, he was clean shaven. And the Romans had a pretty good start, They were pretty much right out the gate, Romulus and Remus raised by wolves, that kind of thing. I mean, they have legends, And I'm talking about my own ancestors to some degree, so I'm like, But is their land divided by rivers? No. I must think of the barbarians in the north, but the thing is, here's the thing. We started looking south to Cush. But they send their ambassadors far away, so we don't know where they go. Back to Israel? No, those were not a people. They weren't smooth-faced. I don't know. But the idea is the present is going to be brought from those people. The the people that have the messengers sent to them. And it's going to be brought to God. So this terrible people, what I think it's saying is, I think what the subtext here, the message hidden here, not that it's some big hidden message, but there is a message hidden because it's hard on the surface to figure out what is he talking about. What is this? Why we get distracted? What nation is he talking about? But does that even matter? No, because there's a principle. I think what he's saying is this: is that there are nations far off from you, like beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, that also are affected by the works of God. Woe to them! Woe to the land shadowed with wings that sends messengers afar off to the people tall and smooth, the terrible. We'll just call them the terrible people. We have the buzzing people and the terrible people, right? The buzzing people are sending messengers to the terrible people. And then God says, listen, I need you to listen to me. When I show a sign, you got to pay attention to it. For so the Lord said to me, look, I'm going to rest, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to cut everything apart, all right? That's what I do. And everything's going to be falling apart, it's going to be left, and there's going to be no one's going to say a thing about it. And when I do this, at that time, I'm going to get a present from this nation that's far off, from this people that are so terrible, far off, that Cush sends ambassadors to. And I think that if you think about it, like the Persians, for one, I don't think it's talking about the Persians. I don't know if they shaved or if it was their custom. I don't think they had beards. It's hard to tell these days because the Islamists don't shave. They have the beard thing. They grow beards. So, Persians nowadays do grow beards even if they shaved in the ancient times. So I don't know. So the idea is that the central verse is that part where he says, listen to all you nations. Listen, when I set up an ensign, hear it. Give ear. All you inhabitants of the world, calling out to everybody to listen. And I think that since they bring the present, they brought the present. The message is here. What happens when you listen? That this terrible nation afar off, that lands that you're acquainted with that are far off, send messengers to. Like you have the farthest nation, you know Africa's big, right? I mean, let's say you're Israel. We know Africa's big. And there's Cush in Ethiopia. There's Egypt, and then there's Cush in Ethiopia, and then there's beyond, right? Down into sub-Saharan Africa and the Congo and all that. And it gets into Mysteryville, the dark continent where people don't know what's going on. And so they're like the people that are farthest away in that direction. People that are pretty far away. Cush is kind of far. So the farthest nation you're acquainted with, your farthest near neighbor, because Cush would be considered kind of a neighbor, but a far off neighbor. The far off nations that they know, their farthest off neighbor. It's kind of like my neighbor's neighbor. I don't know them, but my neighbor knows them. You know what I mean? It's like Israel doesn't know this nation, but Cush knows them. Get it? Israel, you don't even know this nation. Cush sends ambassadors to them, though. And woe to Cush. For that reason. It seems. And not precisely why, I'm not sure, or how, I should say. I know why, but not how. How they should be feeling woe about this, about the sending of messengers to this nation. Probably because I think the effect is this. In some level, Cush and Ethiopia don't heed the warning. But this nation, the terrible nation, does heed the warning. The terrible nation listens. The terrible nation is going to be blessed by God. Why? Because they're bringing presents to God. They're currying favor with God. Because they hear the message, they hear the sign, they see the signal, and they react properly by bringing presents to God, by giving heed to God. The reason it's woe to Ethiopia, because Ethiopia doesn't give heed. Or that's what we can assume, that they are not giving heed. When God lifts them an ensign on the mountain, they're not paying attention. But these strangers from really far, they get the messages from Ethiopia, and they come around. All of a sudden, they see the signs, and they start sending presents to the Lord of hosts in Mount Zion, because they know where that the power exists there. And so it's giving heed. And that's the overall message of the thing, is that there are nations far and terrible and wide, that haven't even heard of God, but they, if they heard, would immediately heed. It's just like when Jonah was upset with God about Nineveh, because he didn't want to prophesy to them, because he didn't want them to hear it and repent and do what was necessary to please God. So that concludes our study. We'll begin with chapter 19, the burden of Egypt. The next chapter, 19, will begin on Monday. Thanks for joining this study. I look forward to being back again. Sorry. Couldn't hold it together. Oh, wait. Let's do the last song for this chapter. Here we go.
All ye inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth,